Thank you very much, Troy. That was well done. He's the most frequent participant at our events and is the best-known conservative talk show host in our region. 9 to 12, Monday through Friday on WPHT has affectionately become known as Dom Time. Please welcome Dom Giordano.
Thanks, Terry, very much. As you know, I love to talk for a living, and we'll do it around the clock, but I feel diminished today because right behind me, the great man spoke with the backdrop of Independence Hall. Gaffer Joe spoke today, and even for the Vice President to reduce, we have people in the room like John Funn, Representative Saccone, a man that I'm going to introduce, any one of whom, Terry, Don, and all the people that are patriots here, Tory would have been a spectacular substitute for this man. No war on women there, just a war on idiocy if she were the speaker. And he told us that the issue of our time is same-sex marriage. That's not even the issue of an hour on my show because we've kind of moved past that. That's not the civil rights, that's not the issue of our time. And something about, on this day, the Founding Fathers struck down the narrow-minded. I think that meant us. That was my interpretation of it. You know, I think if I were blindfolded and tied up, I could tell in Philadelphia where I am when the Pledge of Allegiance was said. I was near Representative Saccone, who, given his status, which I'll talk about in a minute, and he'll amplify that, when it comes to that one phrase, I've been in rooms where the phrase is not said, or the phrase is said, under God. We did it, the Almighty heard it, but we don't want anyone else to hear it. But here, I heard Saccone particularly and others, under God was phrased out. And what a divide where even over the Pledge of Allegiance, that phrase gives trouble. The last week or so, we have been treated to another spasm. I know everyone in the room, but I have a statistic, if you didn't hear it, that might be helpful to you to kind of counter what we're seeing play out. And that is the word chaos and what's going on in our borders. The statistic is this. First of all, with a name, as you know, I would prefer Dominic, Giuseppe, or something like that, Giordano, to make it even more ethnic. With a name like Dominic Joseph Giordano, I don't see how you would be against immigration. But the statistic is this, that Ellis Island from 1892 to 1956, 64 years, and they kept exquisite records. Only 12 million people passed through Ellis Island. So when we hear people today say that we need what we're seeing play out across America, it amazes me. They're making the public believe. If you had asked me before I researched that or read this the other day, I would have guessed 40 or 50 million people came through Ellis Island. Not so. It was a very, very orderly process. And I think of the Tea Party movement, and I think of those people that we saw in Marietta, California, who are being vilified. And I know we're in a transition stage, talking to Don and Terry and others about the label Tea Party and Independence Hall Foundation. And I understand the wisdom of it, and I think it shows the growth and the maturity of the Tea Party. But I have to say, deep down, undercover, you'll always be the Tea Party to me, and we'll always stand with you no matter how long this goes on. I have never seen 27 years of talk radio a more thrilling time than when I met Don after he was beaten up by thugs in the streets of Philadelphia with every TV camera in the world going on, but Terry and others. To see this play out, to remember those days, because there were several of them when the Tea Party movement actually started, and people calling in my show from various corners and standing with this. And you should know that the vilification is the good housekeeping seal of approval. When Nancy Pelosi says you're AstroTurf, ask her what that is. I'd like to see what the answer is. You guys have been the spirit of this, the spirit of talk radio, and it is just a prideful thing to know all of you. One other thought that I had too, mentioning Representative Saccone. On my show today, he said that in God we trust. He's gotten this through Harrisburg. I don't know, the rhinos must have been asleep when that was happening. And I know in the beginning he'd like to have made it mandatory. I like the fact that it's not mandatory that all schools should put in God we trust there, Reverend. I like the fact that they have to decide. So we're going to see what will be the first school in the Delaware Valley that will actually put up a placard saying, "In God we trust." It might help with Common Core and some of the other things. It is remarkable to me that none have done that yet. So that is on my mind. The film America is on my mind. I hope you have a chance to see it, because that film gives more stuff to push back against the things that are reprehensible that are said about America. I have one other duty, honor today too. I often say in my show, maybe I'm a bit biased because I could use his column and I could do 4 hours of talk radio. But we have among us the best columnist today in the Delaware Valley. I would put him up there with the best columnist that we've seen over the last 30 or 40 years. And it's not because of the fact that he's relatively conservative, although a contrarian at times, or that he's pro-life, and that he is definitely pro-life. It's because of his insight, his connection to the Delaware Valley, Bucks County, Levittown, and what he did at the Gosnell trial, which was a simple enough thing, to take row after row of national media seats and to tweet out their vacancy. Because the New York Times, LA Times, the big boys didn't want to cover the Gosnell case for the obvious reason. My sister was the DA prosecuting in that. I didn't say it during the trial because, you know, I didn't want to get her into any trouble. Having Dom Giordano as your brother is not exactly something in Philadelphia that might be helpful to you, maybe in other towns. J.D. Mullane is very worthy of the honor that will be presented today. He is someone who is just a tremendous writer, tremendous insight, and a courageous guy. I'm not sure how it is at the paper, the Bucks County Courier-Times, to be pro-life and to speak out and do the Gosnell stuff in the manner that he did. But I do know that in most places, that's not well received. Think about that. Someone who's on the side of life, someone who's a reasonable individual, he's the one that has the onus on him. This vague pro-choice type of thing is the thing that is somehow or another welcome. And the Gosnell case even resulted in Jack McMahon, the defense attorney for Gosnell, coming on my show and saying he was always pro-choice until this, and even he would set some limits on when and the types of abortions that you would get. So J.D. Mullane this year, I'm so glad you guys are honoring him today. He did something that is of national importance, and he pushed this forward. I would just add one note, too, just to let you know that we're, in talk radio, we're bipartisan when it comes to blame. Tom Ridge is the guy, and I don't know if J.D. will echo this today. I like to settle all the family business. Tom Ridge is the guy responsible as much as anybody for Gosnell. He's one of these Republicans that doesn't get it. It's about principle. It's not about standing up there as governor and saying, don't inspect abortion clinics, but inspect the nail salon. Tom Ridge, as much as Ed Rendell, was responsible for this. And Tom Corbett, with all of his flaws, all the stuff you hear, things that I have to say about him, has been very good in this, very even-handed, in making sure that abortion clinics are treated like any other facility of that sort. Thank God Allison Schwartz is no longer with us, because I had a belt. Except for one reason, I dearly wanted to ask her about running an abortion clinic and why Jane Fonda was her keynote speaker. But I'll save that for another day. Don, I know, is going to introduce J.D. Mullane. I want to say, J.D., this is well-deserved. You are a great journalist and a courageous guy. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me.